Ow. Hello there and welcome. My name is Drew, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. So this is my first book I've read by Brandon Sanderson, but he's like really famous and stuff in the fictional fantasy worlds. So I was like, oh, I guess I'll read this giant thing because it's also supposedly one of the best that he's written, potentially even the best. So hype. So as I will repeatedly point out, this is a huge book, and but I actually have read a bigger book, which is right here, the Dance of Dragons, part of Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones sort of thing. So I read this, although that was like 5+ years ago, and took forever, of course. So I mean, this was intimidating, but not this intimidating. Plus, it doesn't even have nearly as many perspectives as Georgie over here gets into. Anyway, before we get into that, I just have to say this particular edition of the book is really cool. It has like illustrations all throughout, but I can't actually find any. Yeah, like whatever the heck this is. The Codes of War, yeah. I'm pretending like I didn't read this book. But anyway, what did I think of this book? It was very good. Thank you. Okay, fine, I'll say more. So yeah, it's a high fantasy with all its magic and goodness stuff, and this book doesn't get too much into the magic, but Brandon definitely likes his magic systems, and I can tell that there's a lot more that's going to go into this. I mean, this is supposed to be book 1 of 10 in the Stormlight Archive series. So, and they only keep getting longer apparently than this one. So the main character of this is a guy named Kaladin. He used to be like training to be like a surgeon or whatever, but then he ended up going into war and like becoming a soldier, doing well at that. But then all of a sudden, he's a slave, and repercussions of that ensue. Being a slave isn't so great, I've heard. It's pretty interesting actually, because Kaladin ends up in a location, and I sort of like anticipated this was going to be like a world traveling sort of book for some reason, but it really isn't. I wouldn't even say that it has much plot going on, just considering how long it is. It just goes really depth into like what experience that Kaladin has as a slave, as well as the other protagonists as well. So yeah, it's kind of like a long build-up until like so much stuff happens towards like the very end. It almost sounds like a bad thing to think that not much necessarily happens for like a lot of this book, but like each chapter is like really entertaining on its own. It just so happens that we're making slow progress along the way until this grand finale, essentially. I never felt like bored by the book, even as it kept going on and on. You could definitely make the case that it could be truncated, but then you would lose like so many of the great details that end up going into it, and like different characters we can delve into, and all sorts of good book stuff. You know how it is. So I found the world in this really fascinating. It's called Roshar. Please look upon all its glory. By the way, that's just one of like many maps in this book. It's this world where like there's always storms coming through, so like it's really difficult for any vegetation in life to exist. You have to find shelter during these high storms, otherwise you're just basically going to get wrecked by all the debris and stuff. And these high storms like really influence everything going on in the world. And then yeah, it's got its own currency and like own customs. Like women aren't supposed to show their left hands because they do all the reading and writing and crazy stuff like that. Really interesting like customs basically. So incidentally, I'm also writing a high fantasy, so I kind of like was analyzing some things that normal people wouldn't. Like, I was so happy. Like, I caught like only 5 or something typos in this book, and I was like, yes, even someone as legendary as Brandon Sanderson can still have errors. That's not a knock against him. It's just the fact that any errors could exist in this. It's just nice to know that, you know, Brendan is human despite the rumors to the contrary. Yeah, and also there's an interesting creatures in this world that are called Spren, and they can be all sorts of things. They can have like rotten Spren or like glory Spren, or fire Spren. So they'll be around these things. And it's one of the things that's interesting is that it's also emotions, which I actually thought was not a good thing, because a lot of the times it felt like the show don't tell sort of thing, where it's like, oh, there were happy Spren around him. So I don't know if they actually mentioned happy Spren, but anyway, it was like kind of just saying, yeah, he had this emotion because the Spren were there. But as the book went on, it did less of that sort of thing. Of the Spren became more of a background sort of thing. I mean, they're still important to the plot, it seems to be, but just tone it down, and I think that makes it a lot better. But yeah, overall for me, this book is intimidating, but it's quite approachable once you really get into it. His writing style isn't so... It's kind of simple, I guess you could say. The only thing is that, like, in the first few chapters, the book keeps starting over and over again, and it lays in a ton of, like, the cultural names and, like, names of people and stuff in one of the chapters, and it's just way too much at the start. But once you get past that, it's rather gradual learning about the world, and it's pretty fascinating. Yeah, so anyway, overall, I'd probably get this like a 9 out of 10, maybe 9.5, I'm not sure. But it's definitely worth my time. I don't know if I would read it again anytime soon. I mean, there's already 3 other books for me to read right now, so I would probably go on to those. But very solid book. It's even blue. I don't know why that was important, but end of the review. Am I really rhyming to end this video? Really?